On July 15, 2043, a virtual reality multiplayer online game, Infinite Dendrogram, was released worldwide. A boy puts on the virtual reality gear and logs into the game. He opens his eyes and finds himself in a library. A cat-like creature welcomes him. The boy greets the cat and it introduces itself as Control AI number 13, Cheshire. Cheshire asks the boy what his player name should be, and the boy says, Ray Starling. Cheshire then asks him to choose the looks for his avatar. Ray decides to choose his default look, but changes a few things like his hair color and outfit. Cheshire gives him an item box that contains 5 coins totaling 5,000 lire to cover his initial traveling expense. Cheshire then implants an embryo into Ray's left hand. Cheshire tells him that the embryo is currently in its base state, and he can remove it once it hatches into its first form. Ray is happy about the news. Cheshire shows Ray a book and asks him to choose a category and explains the features of each category. Cheshire tells Ray to choose his in-game nationality, and a map showing different places in the game pops up. Ray chooses the Kingdom of Alter, and Cheshire decides to send him to its capital, Altrea. Ray asks Cheshire the goal he should be working towards in the game, and Cheshire tells him that he can be anything he wants to be, and welcomes Ray to Infinite Dendrogram. Suddenly, Ray starts dropping from the sky, screaming, and closes his eyes just as he is about to hit the ground. He opens his eyes and discovers he is not dead. He stands up and walks into the city of Altrea. Ray recalls that he can meet his brother at the fountain, but a lady knight runs into him and knocks him into the ground. Ray's health bar shows that both his arms are broken, but the lady runs to him and heals him. The lady apologizes to Ray as soon as he stands up, and Ray asks politely why she seems to be in a hurry. She tells Ray that she is looking for her sister and gives him a picture asking him if he has seen her. Ray apologizes and says it is his first time in the city. The lady writes her contact on a note and gives it to Ray, telling him to find her if he ever sees her sister. After she leaves, Ray discovers that he can read the language in the note despite not knowing the letters. He also sees that the lady is Vice Commander Liliana Grandia. Suddenly, a level 5 quest to find Liliana Grandia pops up on his screen. This comes as a surprise to Ray because his initial thought is that Liliana is just another player like him, but she is an NPC. Ray wonders how he might have triggered the quest, but decides that he will ask his brother. He reaches the fountain and sees a man in a bear costume playing with children. Ray approaches the bear and asks if he is his brother, and the bear agrees. The bear gives candies to the children and bids them farewell. He introduces himself to Ray as Ray Starling, and Ray introduces himself as well. Ray tells Ray about the quest and Liliana. Ray tells him that Liliana is the most popular figure in the country and has fan clubs with both players and Tians. Ray asks what a Tian is, and Ray tells him that it is a generic name for NPCs. Ray asks why he has gotten a level 5 quest despite being a level 0 player, and Ray explains that there are no conditions for triggering a request, which makes the world realistic. Ray asks for clues about the quest, and Ray gives him Liliana's note. Ray looks at it and shows Ray the message behind it. Ray reads the message aloud and discovers it's a note from Milian to Liliana. Ray says according to the letter, Milian has gone to the old Reeve orchard, which is a bad idea. Ray asks the reason, and Ray tells him that the orchard is in ruins and is overrun by insect monsters. Ray says they must finish the quest very fast because there is no guarantee the quest Tians will be safe until the player finishes the quest. She says when a Tian dies, they are dead for good, and they have lost a lot of important Tians, including the king, and yet the world of Infinite Dendrogram keeps turning, making it very realistic. Ray and Ray join hands together to begin the quest. Ray and Ray arrive at the gates of the old Reeve orchard. Ray gives Ray some items. One of the items can save Ray's life 5 times. An invitation to Ray's party pops up on Ray's screen and he accepts. Ray asks Ray what the implication of dying in the game is. Ray tells him that it is a 24-hour login lockout, which will not allow him to play the game for a day. Ray explains that the worst part is that the 24 locked out hours are equivalent to 72 hours in the game. Therefore, if he dies mid-quest, he is abandoning the quest for 3 days in the game. Ray says he will follow his lead, so he won't die. In the orchard, Liliana is fighting with insect monsters to protect her sister, who is hiding behind her. Ray shoots the insect monsters with his machine gun, and Ray runs to Liliana asking if she is alright. Liliana recognizes both of them, and asks why they are in the orchard. Ray explains their reason, and Liliana thanks them for their help. A notification shows up on Ray's screen, telling him that an NPC has joined their group, but Ray comments on Liliana being on level 210. Ray tells Ray that he thought the reason for the quest being high level is the time limit, but apparently it is because level 210 Liliana is part of their group. A demi-dragon worm appears from the ground. Ray shoots it with his gun, but runs out of bullets. Another worm pulls up again, and Ray approaches them. Ray attempts to activate his 4th form, but freezes on the spot. The worms run him into the ground, and it creates a large, deep hole in the ground. Ray runs towards the hole, and a worm attacks him. Liliana repels the attack, saving Ray, and then tells him to take Liliana somewhere safe. Ray thinks to himself that he'll only be slowing Liliana down because his level is too low. Ray takes Liliana and runs away towards the gate. He asks Liliana why she is in the orchard in the first place. Millie says a man in glasses told her she could find remberries in the orchard if she took insect repellent with her. Another worm attacks them, but Ray dodges the attack with Liliana in his arms. Ray equips Liliana with an item and tells her to run towards the exit. The worm attacks Ray and drains his health bar. He drinks his healing potion and tells Liliana to run towards the gate. The worms keep hitting him over and over, but he keeps drinking the potion. The worm attacks Liliana and throws her up, but Ray catches her before she hits the ground. He hits his back on a tree and his health drains, but Liliana is unhurt due to the item. Ray calls to his embryo, and a bubble shield protects him from the worm's attack. A female appears, which flusters Ray, and she transforms into a large sword in Ray's hand. Ray hits the worm with the sword's Vengeance is Mine ability, and the worm disintegrates. The sword transforms back to the female, and she introduces herself as Nemesis. Liliana and Liliana hug each other and thank Ray and Nemesis for their help. Shu shows up from the ground with a shovel, proclaiming he has finally escaped the underground. Liliana gives the three of them a remberry, and a notification alerts Ray that the quest is complete. Nemesis is unhappy that the reward for the quest is just a remberry, but Shu invites Ray and Nemesis to the feast he has prepared beforehand. A hat appears and says that the latest plan to stomp out powerful Tians is a failure. A sword appears and says the plan has a few holes. The hat explains that the original plan involves giving Miliani poisoned remberries to feed Liliana, but for some reason there were no remberries in the shops, so they had to send in demi-dragon worms instead. The sword adds that their backup plan also failed. The hat says that the bear is strong because it took out nearly 100 demi-dragons. The sword says he looks forward to wiping the bear out and asks the king of beasts for her opinion. She says that she thinks the bear is cute. Shu, Ray, and Nemesis are eating their feast at a restaurant. Shu tells them about the owner of the place being a 3-star chef, but Ray gets a notification that he is hungry and also needs to urinate. Shu tells Ray that he will get regular updates if anything happens in real life. Ray logs out and realizes only a short period has passed in real life. He takes care of his needs and logs back in. He returns to the feast and asks Shu if Nemesis's form is going to change as she evolves. Shu tells him that she will always be a maiden, but she can also evolve to the 7th form and become a superior embryo. Shu says only a few players in the game reach that point. Ray asks how far Shu's embryo has evolved, but Shu tells him it's a secret. Ray asks about Shu's relationship with Liliana, as she seems to resent him a bit. Shu explains that the reason is that he didn't participate in the previous battle against Drife, the Kingdom of Machines, 6 months ago. Ray asks Shu why he didn't join the war, but Shu tells him that the Masters of the Altar didn't participate in the war, because the King of the Altar didn't give out prizes, but the Drive Kingdom had a clear prize standard. Shu points out that the loss of the Altar is because the Big Three, King of Destruction, Over Gladiator Figaro, and High Priestess Tsukio Fuso, didn't participate in the war. This act prevents other ranking players from joining the war. Shu says the war led to the king's death, and also Liliana's father's demise. Shu says Drife didn't completely ruin Altar, because their neighbor, Caldina, invaded them mid-war, causing them to withdraw from Altar. Shu says the war has caused a lot of players to immigrate to other lands, shuffling 70% of the ranking. Ray thinks that this might be his chance to make the rankings. The next day, Shu takes Ray and Nemesis to find gears that will enable Ray to level up. Shu tells Ray that he will need a job and shows him the job diagnostics catalog. Ray decides to be a paladin, but Shu tells him a couple of requirements Ray will need to fulfill before he can get such a high-profile job. Ray completes all the requirements with the help of Nemesis and Shu. After the completion, Ray thanks Shu for his help, and Shu bids them both farewell. Ray and Nemesis set out to start their level-up journey. Ray fights a couple of green monsters on a field, but discovers another player struggling with the monsters. Ray helps the player by healing him up, which allows the player to defeat the monsters. He introduces himself as Rook and his female humanoid embryo as Babylon. Rook invites Ray and Nemesis for tea. They interact and eat together in a restaurant, and after a while, they say goodbye and go their separate ways. Ray and Nemesis head to the forest to continue their level up, but Ray gets hit by a monster. Nemesis repels the monster with counter-absorption, but at that moment, Ray realizes the monster is an embryo. He hears other players screaming from afar and concludes that there is a player killer in the environment. Ray tries to run, and he fights off a few of the attacks, but the player killer shoots Ray with multiple monsters, and they kill him. Ray wakes up in the real world and is disappointed. After the log-out hours are over, he logs into the game again. Ray sees Nemesis and greets her, but she is sad. She apologizes to Ray and blames herself for his death. Ray consoles her and tells her that they will get stronger together and have their revenge. Ray takes Nemesis to the Tomb of the Labyrinth to continue their level up, but Nemesis is scared of ghosts. Ray tells her that there are no player killers in the tomb, because players need a 100,000 lire permit just to get in. The gates to the tomb open, and the gatekeeper tells Ray to enter without asking for a permit because they are not required for paladins. Ray breaks down and whines about his money, but shakes it off and asks Nemesis to transform it into a sword. Nemesis is shivering because she is scared of ghosts. Ray touches her, and she completely loses it. Ray uses her as a sword to kill a couple of ghost monsters, but she sobs because of it. Ray promises to give her a thorough polishing when they get back. Ray and Nemesis sense someone downstairs from them, and an attack launches at them. They repel it with counter-absorption, and Nemesis asks Ray to choose to run or fight. Ray chooses to fight, but the attacker sees Ray and apologizes. The attacker explains that Ray's silhouette looks like a monster, and that is the reason for attacking him. He asks what they are doing in the tomb, because the outdoors is safer for a low-level player. Ray tells him that there are player killers all over the capital, making the area unstable. The attacker says he doesn't realize because he has been in the tomb for 5 days trying to set a record. This shocks Ray and Nemesis, and they ask who he is. He introduces himself as Figaro, and Ray recognizes him as one of the big three. Figaro invites Ray to Gideon, the dual city, to fight in an arena. He tells them the arena is a place to die without actually dying. As Figaro proceeds to leave, he acknowledges their strength and says he'd love to duel with them in an arena. Ray accepts the offer and continues his level-up journey with Nemesis. Ray polishes Nemesis at home and consoles her while she sobs and complains about the rotten flesh all over her body. Ray and Nemesis are eating with Rook in Babylon. Rook asks Ray if the player killers are no longer at the hunting grounds, and Ray says they are not. Rook asks if Figaro might have done something to the player killers, but Ray disagrees because Figaro is based in Dual City, and he has no reason to clear out any other area. Rook asks why the player killers have suddenly vanished from the map, and Ray says they either retreated or someone else defeated them at the same time. A lady in shades appears on their table and tells them they are right about that conclusion. Rook asks who the lady is, and she shows them her pop screen. Her name is Marie Adler. She is a journalist, and her affiliation is DIN, Dendrogram Information Network. Marie says they are a borderless information agency. They ask Marie to clarify about the player killers, but she insists that the information is not free. Ray and Rook split the bill and paid Marie for the information. Marie tells them that the player killers are now paying the penalty for dying. She explains that the player killers are in a band based in specific areas of the kingdom: K&R in the east, Mad Castle in the south, and Goblin Street in the west. Ray wonders about the player killer in the north where he died, but Nemesis asks Marie who killed the player killers. Marie says the 4 masters who have superior embryos, affiliated with Altar, are responsible. She proceeds to mention their names and adds Lele, the prodigal of the feast, as the 4th. Marie shows them an orb and tells them they are about to see the video of certain portions of the event. The video starts from the south and shows a player running away from Mad Castle, but the leader ambushes him. The leader tells the player to do a point damage on him, and he will let the player go. The boy tries his best, but can't penetrate the leader's large armor. The leader crushes him with a shield and proclaims how much he loves being a player killer. The leader gets a call from one of his minions, but gets cut off before giving him any information. The leader now continuously gets notifications telling him his other minions are logged out as a penalty for dying. He senses an attack and quickly blocks it, but the attack takes out the remaining player killers with him. Figaro approaches the leader and calls him Armor Giant, and the leader also recognizes Figaro. Figaro tells him that he just wants to free up the area, and he'll let him live if he retreats. Armor Giant analyzes all of Figaro's weapons, sees that he is no match for Figaro, and decides to retreat. He asks Figaro if they can sign a contract, and Figaro agrees. Figaro approaches him, but as soon as he gets close to the Armor Giant, Armor launches his ultimate attack on Figaro. Figaro dodges the attack and throws him into the sky with his chain, drags him back down, and kills him with his large sword. Figaro at this point is smiling like a demon. Ray comments that the battle is a gruesome one. In the east, Tsukio marches in with her followers and creates a moon, which causes a dark barrier around the area. The barrier makes the player killers in the area lose their breath, and the followers take the opportunity to stab them to death with their spears. Marie explains the tenets of the Lunar Society's religion created by Tsukio before showing the clip to the west. Lele fights a couple of player killers, and they explode as soon as she touches them. Ray comments on the sight of the fight being terrifying, and Marie tells him about Lele's habit of poisoning newbies, and that she doesn't know why Lele has joined the player killer hunt. Marie mentions the north, and Ray asks her who the killer in the north is. Marie responds that the killer's identity is unknown, but the killer is a superior killer. She shows them the clip of the King of Destruction burning down the Naz forest where the superior killer is. Marie explains that the King of Destruction's Embryo is rumored to be a battleship, but despite the damage it caused in the forest, the superior killer made it out alive. Nemesis and Ray are happy to hear that the superior killer is alive. Ray and Nemesis arrive at the Nas forest and see that it is now a wasteland. Nemesis notices a barrier and runs through it. Ray runs after her, touches the barrier, and walks into it. Inside, he sees Cheshire and Nemesis drinking tea, and he joins them. Ray asks why Cheshire is in the barrier, and it replies that it is there for environmental maintenance prep, and it is surprising that they can enter the barrier, because normally players cannot. Cheshire says it's probably because Nemesis is a maiden embryo. Ray asks Cheshire if they are going to fix up the area, but Cheshire tells him that they will only make it easier to build something similar there, because AIs do not interfere with Mark's autonomous acts leave on the world. Cheshire also explains how the AIs punish certain players, such as wanted suspects and criminals. Ray and Nemesis get ready to leave, but Cheshire decides to give them a hint to mark the occasion. Cheshire tells them that the ogre's heart is in its stomach, but Ray doesn't quite understand what it means. Cheshire bids them farewell, and they leave the barrier. In a cafe, Ray and Rook look through a bunch of requests they can take on their trip to Gideon. Ray asks Rook the category of his job, and Rook says he is a pimp. He shows Ray his skills, but they are all related to taming monsters. Ray also shows Rook his skills, and Rook says that his job is amazing. Ray notices that Marie is also with them and asks her what her business is with them. Marie says she has business in Gideon and wants to join them in requesting the way. Rook and Ray don't mind, and Ray suggests a level 2 quest. The quest is to deliver goods from the local guild to the one in Gideon for 30,000 lire. They all agree to embark on the quest the next morning. A bunch of goblins are attacking a cart. The soldiers guarding the cart tell the cart driver to leave them behind. The driver rides off with the cart, but the people inside the cart notice that the goblins are laughing at them. Suddenly, a large monster shatters the cart and kills them all. Ray asks Rook about Marilyn, the tri-horn demi-dragon pulling the cart they are traveling on. Rook says it is a reward for doing some modeling for an artist, and he chose it out of all the other rewards because it will put his monster-enhanced skill to good use. Rook shows Ray a jewel in his right hand, which enables him to store monsters. Marie tells the group that her journalist skill boosts the entire party's experience points, but she has no fighting ability. Nemesis sees a group of soldiers fighting goblins and calls Ray's attention to it. Ray and the crew decide to help the soldiers. Rook releases Marilyn, and it takes out a couple of goblins. Ray and Nemesis combine and slash up several other goblins. Rook and Babylon cast a love spell on one of the goblins, and it starts killing its kind. After the battle, a soldier approaches Ray in an attempt to thank him, but an attack, which Ray manages to escape, kills the soldier. A large monster attempts to smash Ray, but he repels it with counter-absorption. Ray and Nemesis recognize the monster as the great miasmic ogre, Gardrando. Ray charges towards Gardrando, but it releases a smoke containing poison into the area. The poison causes intoxication and weakness to Ray and others, including Marilyn. Gardrando attempts to crush Ray, but Marilyn attacks it and pushes the ogre backwards. Gardrando grabs and flips Marilyn into the ground, but before finishing it off, Rook quickly absorbs Marilyn into his jewel. Babylon tries the temptation spell on Gardrando, but it doesn't work, and Gardrando runs towards Ray to smash him. Ray uses the Vengeance's mind technique to cut off a few of Gardrando's fingers. Ray tries to heal himself with the first healing technique, but it doesn't get rid of the intoxication and weakness. Marie throws a glass of elixir into his face, but he screams at her. Ray notices that he suddenly feels alright, and Marie tells him the effects of the elixir only last for 180 seconds. Ray and Gardrando engage in a battle that involves Ray cutting Gardrando and building up the hits he takes from Gardrando. A crimson rock bird belonging to Gardrando attacks Ray, but he dodges the bird. Rook and Babylon decide to take on the bird because Babylon can fly. Ray builds up the hits until he can use Vengeance to mine again. In the few seconds remaining for the elixir to wear off, Ray launches his attack on Gardrando, but Gardrando releases fire at him. Ray repels the fire with counter-absorption and hits Gardrando in the head with Vengeance's mine, but Gardrando punches him into the ground. The elixir wears off and Ray starts feeling the intoxication and weakness again. He recalls Cheshire telling him about the ogre's heart location, but thinks he can't do anything with that information again now that his strength is gone. He snaps out of it and decides not to give up. Nemesis calls his attention to a beeping sound in his gear, and Ray sees a countdown asking him if he wishes to cancel. Gardrando grows new eyes on its arms and starts charging towards Ray. Ray wonders what to do about the countdown, but it runs out. Ray hears an announcement that the emergency evolution of Nemesis is commencing. The sword transforms into its second form, the flag halberd, and turns into a spear. Gardrando attacks Ray, but he dodges it. Ray charges toward Gardrando with the spear and cuts it. He realizes that he is sharper than before and his health keeps increasing. Nemesis tells him that it is as a result of her evolution. Gardrando releases more toxic smoke on Ray, but it doesn't affect him and he stabs it in the stomach. Gardranda moves backwards, but the wound in its body heals up. Ray sees this and decides to use Vengeance is Mine on Gardranda, but Nemesis tells him that both Counter Absorption and Vengeance is Mine are not usable in her current form. Ray says that he will have to use the sword form for the attack, but Nemesis warns him that his intoxication and weakness will return. Ray decides that he will weaken Gardranda until the right moment to switch arrives. Ray charges towards Gardranda and cuts it in different parts of its body, all while receiving hits and building up his attack. Nemesis tells Ray that the buildup is complete, and he runs towards Gardranda, dodges its attack, and cuts its feet, causing the ogre to kneel. Ray tells Nemesis to switch to sword mode, and his weakness returns. He runs towards the ogre, who releases a fire at him, but he repels it with counter absorption. Ray sees another fire attack Gardranda intends to use on him, but a shot is fired into the attack, leaving the ogre vulnerable. Ray stabs Gardranda and kills it. An update appears on his screen that he has been selected as MVP for slaying Gardranda, and he now has a few new gears. Marie gives Ray a first aid elixir, and he drinks it. He asks Marie if there was a superior killer in the area during the fight. Marie says she saw him fire his embryo from a distance, but he is now headed to Gideon. Rook and Babylon tame the rock bird and name it Audrey. A man approaches the players and thanks them for their help. The crew arrives at Gideon and talks about how lively the city is. Nemesis tries to grab food in the market, but Ray drags her away and says they need to go to the Adventurers Guild. In the guild, Ray drops the million lyre bounty for slaying Gardranda on the table and asks the crew how to share it. After sharing the reward, Ray and Nemesis head out to try out their newly acquired gears for defeating Gardranda. Ray tries the bracer's gear on a goblin, but it backfires and burns him instead. Ray manages to kill the goblin and decides to try the hellish miasma on a walking grapevine. It backfires and hits him yet again. Ray rests on a tree, but Nemesis notices a large penguin hiding behind the tree. The penguin introduces itself as Dr. Flamingo and offers Ray an elixir that can heal his ailments. Ray drinks it and notices he feels good, but gets a headache right after. Ray looks into a mirror and sees 2 dog ears on his head. Flamingo bursts into joy and proclaims that his drug is a success and thanks Ray for being his guinea pig. Ray threatens Flamingo with his sword to fix it, but Flamingo tells him it will go away in 10 hours, excluding the time he logs out. Flamingo asks Ray for a screenshot of him topless, and Ray angrily attempts to strike him. Flamingo dodges it and runs away at top speed. Ray realizes how fast Flamingo is and wonders how Flamingo knows his name. Marie draws a topless picture of Ray and asks him why he has dog ears. Ray explains his meeting with Flamingo to Marie. Ray says he wants to visit Alejandro's shop, but doesn't feel he should go because of his ears. Marie tells him not to worry, because it's not that rare for a master to suddenly grow animal ears. At the shop, Alejandro welcomes Ray and Nemesis. Ray is glad that Alejandro doesn't find his ears weird, but hopes he doesn't run into Rook and Babylon. Rook and Babylon are in the shop, and they greet Ray and Nemesis. Rook asks Ray about his ears, but Ray replies with a bunch of gibberish. Rook understands the gibberish that shocks Ray and Nemesis. Ray asks if he is psychic, but Rook says it is just simple minding reading. Nemesis breaks down and laments that her identity is exposed. Ray compliments Rook's coat and decides to get one for himself. After getting the coat, Ray sees a long queue at a gacha machine. Nemesis complains that Ray has spent 200,000 lire at the gacha machine, but Ray tells her not to remind him again. Ray recalls Rook winning a piece of special armor from the machine and wonders why he is so unlucky. He opens his capsule and an armored horse appears. Information about the stallion shows on Ray's screen, and he attempts to ride the horse. The horse throws him off, and he lands on his face. Nemesis wonders why Ray is a paladin but can't ride a horse. Ray checks his qualities and discovers he doesn't have horse riding skills. He logs out for a bit to find solutions to his problem. Ray checks on his computer and discovers that the amulet of the equestrian tribe will allow him to learn horse riding, but it costs 100,000 lire. Ray logs back in and decides he needs to start making money. Nemesis suggests the arena, but Ray says only level 51 players and above can fight in the arena. He says he will bet on the fights, but Nemesis shoots the idea down, pointing out that he is unlucky. They see a woman getting harassed by a couple of goons. Ray decides to step in, but another player is ahead of him. The player tells the goons that his level is 126 and reaches for his pocket. The goons attack him before he can bring out his gear, and they beat him up. Ray tells the lady to run, but wonders why a level 126 player will get beat up so easily. One of the goons attacks Ray, but he punches him into the ground and the rest of the goons run away in fear. Ray wonders why his attack is suddenly so strong, but realizes his hellish miasma gear increases his attack power by over 100%. Ray heals the player, but the player notices his dog ears and compliments them. The player introduces himself as Hugo Lesseps, Master and High Driver. Ray and Nemesis also introduce themselves to him. Ray asks why he got beat up easily since his level is high. Hugo says the quirk of his job is that his physical stats are very low. The lady comes back and thanks Ray for saving her earlier, but asks him to help save her little brother from the Guzmais gang, who abduct children for ransom. She says the gang kills and eats the children whose ransoms are not paid. She offers to pay Ray and Hugo for their help, but they accept to do it free of charge. A young lady brings back the unconscious bodies of the runaway goons and calls to Hugo. She tells him that she interrogated the goons and that their hideout is in the Cruella mountain belt. The young lady, Psycho, calls Nemesis a lowly and Ray a lowly lover, which they both deny. Psycho and Nemesis engage in a brawl, and Ray asks Hugo who Psycho is. Hugo says she is a reliable member of his party. Psycho and Nemesis suddenly shake hands and come to a truce, which surprises Hugo and Ray. An update to accept the triggered level 8 quest, Rescue Roddy Lankarse, pops up on their screens, and they accept the mission. The party walks through the forest, and Hugo stops them at a bare spot. He clicks a few codes on his screen and brings out his machinery. Hugo introduces the party to Megan gear, which is the main weapon of the Drife Imperium. He mounts the gear and carries the rest of the party to the hideout. They arrive at the hideout, and Psycho asks if they should barge in. Ray says that it will be over if the gang decides to use the kids as hostages. Hugo tells them that if he attacks the hideout with the Megan gear, the goons won't take the children hostage, because Drife is a nation with no reason to save Alter Kingdom's children. He tells them to sneak into the fort to rescue the children at that moment. A new batch of kidnapped kids are brought in a cart to the hideout. Psycho uses her skill to overhear the gang's plan to kill the children. Hugo rushes in, shoots the carts, and releases a smokescreen to obstruct the goons' vision. Ray and Nemesis sneak into the fort, and they see a bunch of zombie kids walking towards them. Ray burns them up with his fire gear. Ray received a message that killing the zombies grants him an active skill, purifying silverlight. Ray hears the voices of the kids thanking him, and his heart sinks. Ray wonders if some players have quit the game rather than experience these feelings time and time again. Ray chooses not to give up and says he will punish the criminals responsible for the children's deaths. The first leader of the gang watches the situation outside through his screen. He says Goose, the second leader, will take care of the outside party, and he will deal with the master inside the fort. Outside, Hugo senses a strong presence and shoots at it. A horned beast, Gauze, comes out of the fort and confronts Hugo. Gauze charges towards Hugo, and Hugo hits him with a knife, but it breaks. Gauze throws Hugo into the ground, and Hugo admits he has misjudged Goose. Hugo bleeds out, but Psycho tells him to use his skill. While Hugo is deliberating on whether to use his skill or not, he sees Goose munching on the heads of children, and this angers him. Hugo calls Goose and tells him he will not forgive him for killing children. Goose laughs in his face and calls Hugo a master, whose whole existence is all for fun and games. Hugo calls to Psycho, and she calls him Master, merging with the Megan gear. Hugo says this is his Embryo, type Maiden Chariot, Psychotus. Goose says Hugo is just showing off and runs into the Embryo's barrier. Meanwhile, in the fort, Ray breaks into a cell and confirms the kids are still alive. He sees a boy lying down across the room, on a dark magic symbol, drawn with blood, and Nemesis wonders if it is an experiment. Ray rushes in to carry the boy, but the boy cuts him and he falls to the ground. The corpse he stepped on his way into the room then gets up and starts regenerating. He had been set up. The corpse then regenerates and turns into a centaur, and starts telling him that the dagger he got attacked with is coated with poison and a paralysis-inflicting potion. The centaur then thinks to himself that he is almost at his goal of becoming the immortal king of corpses, because has almost met the requirement of turning 5,000 years worth of life into undead and creating the crystal of resentment. He stretches out his hand to grab the kid he used to bait Ray, but his hand gets sliced off by Ray in an instant. He screams in agony as Ray slowly gets up and promises to end him there. The half-man, half-horse beast tries to use some undead binding spell to hold Ray down, but they fail as Ray slashes his stomach. The centaur then thinks to himself that a lich like him might be in a tight spot because he won't be able to regenerate if he gets struck by Ray's weapon of purifying silverlight. He then uses a skill to awaken some undead soldiers to attack Sid while he escapes, but Sid destroys them in no time and comes after him. Panicking, he runs out of the castle with the hopes of running to Goose for protection, but meets Goose's body shattered to pieces. Cornered between Hugo and Ray, the centaur thinks about how much of a waste it'll be if he dies without becoming the king of corpses. He uses the not fully activated Crystal of Resentment to fire a massive attack on Ray, who blocks it with counter-absorption. The centaur pathetically begs for his life while offering money, but Ray just executes him with a single punch. An inventory appears beside his corpse. Ray is about to pass out from the reverse effects of fighting the centaur, but Hugo offers him a potion which fixes him up. They then head into the tower to rescue the kids in there, leaving the inventory behind. On the other hand, a group of bandits who were used to transport the kids to the tower earlier were taking shelter while watching from a distance. They then try to break open the centaur's inventory before running away with the rest of the kids outside. To their surprise, a huge amount of money appeared, but there was an egg-shaped one-eyed figure amid the coins. The figure starts speaking, and then shoots out tentacles to absorb all the bandits around it, alongside Goose's chopped-off head. It then transforms into a gigantic half-beast, half-horse figure. Coming out with the kids, Ray and the rest discover the beast rampaging around. Ray tries to buy some time for Hugo and the rest to get the kids to safety, while he charges for the monster and knocks it down, but the beast regenerates and gets back on its feet in no time. It then changes course and starts to head towards the carriage Hugo is using to transport the kids. That's when they discover that the beast is merely a corpse of both Gauss and the centaur, and is being driven by vengeance against the two people who killed them. Ray pursues after it and slashes one of its legs, causing it to trip, then tries to get the Lich back in control so it would come after him instead. The Lich eventually gets back in control, and fires an unpredictable attack that sends Ray flying. Nemesis transforms into her human form to shield him from the crashing impact, but Ray is still left unconscious and with some broken bones. Then Nemesis takes it upon herself to do everything she can to protect her master until he wakes up, saying she believed in him. Ray meets himself with a shadowy figure in a flashback of his memories about how his older brother sustained an injury while trying to save him from an upcoming vehicle. It shows him how his brother told him not to blame himself, and not to give up no matter what he faces. The shadowy figure then reveals itself to be a fragment of Gandranda that was reborn as his item. It tells him to use it alongside Nemesis to defeat the beast. Ray wakes up and regroups with Nemesis, who had been holding back the beast for a while now. He uses the poisonous mist of Gandranda to cover up the area the beast is in, and starts attacking it within the mist. He then knocks the beast down, ingests a part of its body, and charges towards its head to attack its core. It fires a deadly attack, but he dodges it and uses the counter-absorption of the attack he absorbed earlier to destroy its core, thereby defeating the beast. Ray gets a ton of rewards for defeating the grudge-soaked Greaves, Gauss Maze, including the skill that finally enables him to ride the silver horse he won previously. The other skill he got turns grudge energy into MP or SP. He and Nemesis then discuss as they head back home. Hugo, on the other hand, meets up with the weird guy in the penguin costume, and they discuss how Ray may end up being a hindrance to their forthcoming plan, but the penguin guy tells him not to worry. He adds that if their plan goes well, the war between the Imperium and the Kingdom will end with only minimal casualties. He also adds that the general wants an all-out war, so if they're going to be doing it, they have to do it in an elegant yet exciting way. A bunch of carriages are traveling together with a weird alien sitting on top of one of them. A little girl named Kang tries to climb to the top too, then trips in the process, but she gets caught by the alien. She then thanks her master Shunyu, the alien, for saving her. The alien senses something and asks her to get down. Immediately as she gets down, a bullet gets fired, which the alien slices into two in a split second. On the other hand, the group of people who fired the bullet are hiding at a distance. Their leader then tries to wait for the alien's carriage to be within his range, so he can use his special attack, but things begin to get weird. The carriage then stops immediately as it gets within range, and the alien comes down and stares at them from a distance. Then in a split second, blood pours down the leader's eyes. By the time he realizes it, his heart is already in the hands of the alien, who squashes it and kills him. The rest of his crew try to aim their snipers at the alien too, but it just appears beside them and slaughters them mercilessly. Ray holds a conversation with Nemesis about how handy Gauss Maze's grudge conversation is to him. It can convert not just the negative emotions of dead bodies, but that of living things too, into MP and SP. Ray and Nemesis meet up with Marie for tips on how to get stronger, so they can take revenge on the superior killer who wiped them out the other day. She asks Ray what he thinks their weakness is, and he replies that his range is too short, and that things get bad fast once Nemesis's skill fails. She tells them that that's correct, but that he also lacks speed and toughness, so he has to raise his agility and endurance. She tells him that that superior killer has a high agility superior job, so he has to boost agility and endurance skills a lot, instead of just focusing on strength. Marie adds that real-life skills like martial arts or drawing will also be reflected here, and Ray wonders if that's why his brother is a ranking player. She then adds that there's also another powerful skill called the Embryo skills. This skill expresses the embryo's unique characteristics, and that'd be Nemesis for them. She says they can only learn the skill after reaching a high rank, so they ask her if she has learnt the skill. Flustered, she mutters to herself nervously, and that's when Rook and Baby show up. Marie then uses that as an excuse and goes to order food for them at the counter. After ordering food for them, Marie hands over a ticket each to Rook and Ray, inviting them to the clash of the superiors with Figaro against Shunyu, the alien. They all then plan to split up and then meet up again at the time on the tickets. Ray and Nemesis head to the Adventurers Guild to collect their reward for defeating Gauss Maze. On getting there, they're handed even more money than they expected, so they agree not to touch the riches until they've met and discussed it with Hugo about it. They head back to the city afterward and meet Ray Starling, Ray's older brother, amid some children. On noticing them, he gives the children some candy and sends them off, preparing for a conversation with Ray. Suddenly, Ray notices a porcupine-like pet on Shu's head and asks him about it. Then a blue-haired girl shows up and apologizes about her behemoth's rude behavior, and Shu gives them some candy as they leave too. As they leave, Nemesis seems cautious of them but doesn't have a particular reason. They all head to a cafe and have their discussion. Shu claims he also came to the city to see his friend, Figaro fight. Shu then checks Ray's ticket and finds out that they're in the same box, so they can watch the fight together. He accesses Ray's gear and finds out that Ray has done a lot of adventuring during his short time in the game. He then adds that Figaro and himself beat their first unique boss monster during their first low-rank jobs, and that they both took down a UBM each. Since Shu joined the game on launch day, he must have been one of the first masters to take down a UBM. Shu then says he has somewhere to be and takes his leave. Shortly after he leaves, Hugo and Psycho come and meet them at the same table. Ray then tells them about the money and that they should share it equally, but Hugo declines and insists that he'd only take half of the half being offered to him, leaving Ray with 3/4 of the amount. They then engage in a few discussions before Ray and Nemesis decide to take their leave for the Clash of the Superiors match. Hugo then tells them something about Figaro entering from the west as they take their leave. The little girl, Kang, catches a fever, so she apologizes to her master Shunyu that she won't be able to cheer him up during his match. Shunyu tells her not to worry, but ensures she gets enough rest. Shunyu then grabs the ambassador, Mihai, who was with them the whole time, and zooms off to the avenue. The weird guy in the penguin costume reports from a distance to someone over the phone that Kang, the first princess, won't be coming, so the Queen of Monsters won't be making a move. He adds that it still doesn't reduce their success rate. After all, his favorite was still on their side. The Clash of Superiors begins, and many high-ranking players clash and put up interesting fights for the audience. During the match, Ray notices his brother going somewhere different, so he and Nemesis decide to follow. They then meet him discussing with Figaro in secret that something seems suspicious, and that he should stay alert. They then joined in the conversation. Figaro is about to tell Ray and Nemesis something about himself and Shu, but Shu interrupts him. Shu then gives Ray a telepathy cuff and tells them to go ahead, and that he still wants to have a little chat with Figaro. Shu discusses with Figaro that the odds of him winning are very slim. After all, he's facing the mighty Zunyu, but Figaro tells him to relax, and that these moments that set his life ablaze are the whole reason he's in the game in the first place. Then he adds that he'll win with everything he is. Ray is about to bet all the money he got from defeating Guzmais on Figaro, but gets stopped by Nemesis, smacks him down, saying he didn't know the value of money. Shunyu then appears, saying it would be a pity because they were wasting money betting on Figaro. Ray senses bloodlust and gets ready for combat. Shunyu also takes him as a threat and commences an attack, but Shu appears in a split second and stops them from fighting. He then introduces himself as just an average passer-bear. Shunyu tells Shu that he looks powerful and asks who he is, but Shu just replies that he's an average costume fanatic and nothing more. Shunyu then tests it out with an attack that Shu deflects in a split second. Shunyu is then amazed and says that even if Figaro is a bust, he can at least fight him, but Shu tells him that it's not going to be happening because Figaro is going to beat him. As Zunyu is about to take his leave, Ray asks him about the girl who was passed out on his hand, and that's when Zunyu realizes that he came after him because he thought he had kidnapped the ambassador, Meihai. Zunyu then whispers something to Ray's ear and takes his leave. They all head to their box to watch the fight and meet Marie, Rook, and Baby already there. Marie then asks Ray about the bear person with them, and he introduces him as his older brother and that they happen to be in the same box. They each introduce themselves to Shu, and the event begins. The necessary introductions are done as both Shunyu and Figaro enter the battle arena from opposite sides. The rules are being stated, and a barrier is placed around them as the match commences. Before the match begins, Shunyu makes a statement that he won't be taking a step from where he is until Figaro is brought to his knees. The match then begins, and Figaro and Shunyu clash at an immense speed that not everyone in the audience can follow. Figaro is pushed to the defensive by Shunyu, who specializes in long-range attacks but still keeps up pretty well with the superior, who was made for speed. Shu and the others analyze Shunyu's skills and conclude that his arms must be his superior Embryo because his attacks are hitting his arms and are hardly dealing any damage. Shunyu then fires a lightning attack and a fire explosive attack afterwards, but Figaro blocks them with 0 damage using an equipment skill. Shu then says that they had both played their aces in the hole, and that Zunyu played it on offense, while Figaro played it on defense. But apparently, Shunyu whispered another skill while firing those attacks, and they're all waiting to see the effect of the skill. Immediately, as Figaro's defense wears off, he falls on his knees, bleeding. Then Shunyu shows a piece of flesh, saying he had missed Figaro's heart and pulled out a lung. Shu and the others analyze Shunyu's speed and long-range skills, and then conclude that he was only able to breach Figaro's defense through warping. Shunyu then stops moving, and Shu adds that it's because he's currently being cautious of Figaro, and that Figaro had been using his superior Embryo the whole time, so Shunyu couldn't afford to be careless. Figaro takes his gear off and becomes extremely stronger, leaving everybody wondering how it is possible. Shu then analyzes his equipment. Starting stats are doubled when he is in full gear, but his embryo's unique trait is that his stats rise in proportion to battle time, so the longer the fight, the more powerful he gets. That's why he can fight even better without his gear. Figaro and Xunyu each draw out a superior item and prepare to clash with it. Figaro seems to be at a disadvantage because Xunyu specializes in long-range attacks, so he would have to come close before landing a hit on his vital parts. The crowd anticipates as they go for the clash at immense speed. Figaro's arm gets chopped off in the process, but he doesn't stop and still charges towards Xunyu. Xunyu, on the other hand, keeps an extra blade which he stabs into Figaro's heart as he reaches him. He then jubilates, thinking he already won, but doesn't realize that he just put himself at a major disadvantage. His blade was stuck in Figaro's chest. Figaro's embryo is a heart-shaped superior embryo, so Xunyu's attack couldn't penetrate. Figaro then strikes Xunyu with his superior item, Fang of Gloria, and defeats him right there. Figaro wins the match. Just as everybody cheers for Figaro, something strange happens as Figaro is stopped in time within the barrier. The weird guy in the penguin costume then shows up on top of the barrier, takes off his costume, and introduces himself as Mr. Franklin. It appears he's already well known for his bad reputation of making monster fodder for their king and his pals. The raging audience fires a bunch of attacks towards him, but none of them leave even a scratch on his body. A bird then lands on his hand and transforms into the second princess, Elizabeth S. Alter. He holds her hostage and tells them he wants to play a game. Marie is buying the tickets to the Clash of the Superiors when she notices some thugs trying to kidnap a little girl. She then knocks them out and rescues her. Some royal guards then appear and try to take the girl too, but the girl drags Marie and runs. Marie then escapes with the girl. The little girl introduces herself as Elizabeth, the second princess of the nation. Marie then introduces herself afterward. Princess Elizabeth said they had come to Gideon, and they wouldn't let her go outside, so that's why she came outside to do some sightseeing. She then beckons on Marie to show her around. Marie agreed to it, and it made the princess happy, and they became closer since then. Now seeing that Mr. Franklin has captured the princess gets her pissed off. While Mr. Franklin brags about the fact that he has the princess in his arms, someone from the audience fires an attack on him, and it gets him pissed off. Mr. Franklin then uses an oxygen slime attack to disintegrate the person into pieces. Some people in the audience try to destroy the oxygen slime, but it just regenerates back. Mr. Franklin then presses a button that makes different oxygen slimes appear at random locations in the arena, causing everybody to panic. He tells them that there are scads of these things set up throughout the city, so they'll automatically engulf the whole city in the space of 1 hour. He then tells them that there are only 2 ways to stop it, which are either killing him or getting him to take the death penalty. Shu wonders why he told them exactly how to win the game, and Rook says he probably wants them to believe they can avoid the catastrophe and then have them fail. They hear some noise in the lobby and head there, only to discover some people trying to use brute force to break open the barrier. Mr. Franklin then tells them that for every strike made to the barrier, a new monster is being released somewhere in town, and that if the barrier were to be destroyed, all the monsters would be set free at once. The kingdom is at a higher risk because most of the high-ranking fighters are within the barrier. Princess Elizabeth asks Mr. Franklin why he's attacking Gideon, and he tells her it's just a little entertainment to mark the end of war business. He adds that the mightiest knight, the greatest mage, and the king are all dead, but the nation still hasn't given up. He says it's because their ranked players didn't perform in the last war, and that's why they lost. He says that was the entire point of the Clash of the Superiors, so they could show off their powers as superiors, and that they're still strong enough. So he said he's there specifically to break the nation's spirit by tearing the city to shreds, while the superiors are trapped inside the barrier and kidnapping their princess. Princess Elizabeth just tells him that she finds the kingdom's masters quite dependable. Ray asks his brother if at all there could be any powerful masters who just decided not to attend the match, but he tells him that Franklin would have taken measures against any tough guys who could pose any threat. Ray then tries to touch the barrier, but his hand goes right through. The barrier was only made to stop players who are above level 50, and his total level is level 41. Realizing that his brother can pass through the barrier, Shu explains the risks to Ray and lets him know he can lose his life in the process. He then asks him if he would still be interested in going, but Ray still insists on going, saying it would leave a bad taste in his mouth if he didn't. Shu then gives him his last brooches and tells him to try not to die and that he'll be right there too. Ray and the few players below level 50 head out and prepare for battle against the enemies set around the barrier by Franklin. Ray uses his poison mist to cover the entire area, and they start attacking the enemies who were initially underrating them. Rook and Ray play the major role as they take down all the enemies within the mist. Franklin observes what's going on around the kingdom through a device and finds out that some powerful folks didn't come for the event. Unfortunately for him, they were disrupting his plans, but he still had a few other tricks left up his sleeve. While he tries to get things back in control, an attack gets fired at him from a distance and disrupts his next, causing him and the princess to fall from the sky. Following the tip given to them by Hugo earlier, Ray and Rook head towards the west gate. On the other hand, Princess Elizabeth wakes up in the arms of Marie, who is trying to get her to a safe space. Princess Elizabeth then hands her the device Franklin was using to observe the arena, and it happens to be very handy. Just as they're about to get to the safe arena, Franklin appears and uses a skill to turn the princess into a bird again, and she flies back to him. Franklin then summons one of his trump cards, a superior master, who introduces himself as Veldoorbel, king of orchestras, against her. Marie also introduces herself to him, and they prepare for battle. Some of the people in the kingdom encounter Hugo and Psycho standing in their path, so they try to fight them, but they all get frozen to death in an instant by Psycho's La Porte de l'Enfer. Veldoorbel tells his story about how he blamed himself for lacking creativity in the real world, how he wondered why he wasn't born during the days of knights, or the days of myths and legends. But then he discovered Infinite Dendrogram, a world exceedingly close to his ideal fantasy, where he could finally find the feeling he had been searching for. Marie struggles while trying to get her attacks to reach Veldoorbel, but struggles because Veldoorbel uses some sound attacks and vibration fields to crush all her bullets through shockwaves. He also uses sound-based hypnosis and ultrasonic scalpel skills to keep her at a distance while attacking continuously with his Legion of Orchestra. She then tries to hold a conversation with him to find out why he decided to team up with Franklin, and he says it's because he thinks Franklin might become an actual hero. He says he wants to see with his own eyes the very moment a real hero arises. Veldoorbel uses a low-frequency, high-volume sound attack and gets Marie bleeding through her eyes and ears. Then a tornado starts and engulfs her. She gets a flashback about how she struggled with her career as an artist in the real world, and about how she discovered the game as a means of solace and feeling alive again. About how playing the game makes her feel like she is completing the role of the character, Marie Adler, whom she could not continue in her manga, and how happy playing the game makes her feel. After the tornado stops, Veldoorbel uses a sound wave skill to search the area for Marie but can't sense her, so he lets his guard down. Marie then immediately appears and destroys the potion he's about to use to regrow his MP and SP. He immediately retreats and tries to find out how she was able to escape from his attack, but feigns ignorance and thinks about how much SP she lost by using her ultimate vanishing skill to escape the attack. She then pulls out a golden bullet, loads it into her gun, and tells him she's about to end him, but he tells her that he's not going down until he sees history being made in the nation tonight. He also prepares for attack but gets knocked down by Marie in the process. Then she ends him for good. Franklin observes on his device how things are starting to get ugly, and that there is still Ray Starling, who will still end up being a threat, but he's well relaxed because he still has another trump card to use. Franklin meets up with Hugo and tells him to tweak his settings to prepare for combat with Ray. Franklin then tries to step out of the city and realizes that he has been surrounded by the royal guards who threaten to use force to take back the princess if he doesn't hand her over. Of course, Franklin declines, and the royal guards charge at him, almost costing him his life. He then summons a multiple-eyed monster to fight them back. Yuri Gautier tells the story of how she was born into an upper-class family in the south of France, about how her father was so domineering that he took it on her mother and the children, and how her older sister left as a cause. Then it led to the divorce of her parents afterward, how she blamed herself for not being a powerful knight who could have protected her mother and sister from her father, and how she discovered Infinite Dendrogram as a platform where she could become a powerful knight that would defeat tragedies that threatened women. That's how Hugo was formed. Psycho tries to confirm from Hugo if he's still sure about proceeding with the mission, but he says it's the only way to avoid a pointless war, and that they should proceed with it. Rook and Ray get to the city gate and meet Hugo blocking their way. He says he'll only let Ray through, and that's because Franklin wants to fight him himself. Rook tells Ray to head on ahead, and that he will take care of things with Hugo. While Ray charges for the city gate, Hugo asks for an exchange of an all-out single blow, and forces Ray to use counter-absorption once before heading on to meet Franklin. The attack takes a toll on Hugo, leaving him at a disadvantage against Rook, who starts attacking regardless. Hugo then swears not to let Rook pass through, and Rook says he's going to defeat Hugo with everything he has and force his way through, as Ray's friend and as himself. They both go all out and fight fair and square. The royal guards use some top-tier skills on the multiple-eyed monster, but they have no effect. Franklin then tells them that if they hadn't been paladins with holy elements and their swords, they might have stood a chance, but now they don't. Ray then shows up and sends a large fireball to the multiple-eyed creature. Franklin is excited to see him, and he tells him that it'll be worth snapping him to pieces. On the other hand, Ray is annoyed, and tells Franklin that he'll make him pay for what he did. Rook talks about his story. Born in London into a family of a detective and a thief, Rook's parents' traits were passed down to him. Rook says that his parents didn't tell him to follow in their footsteps, but he should figure out a way to make a living. When he was 15, his parents died in a plane crash. Realizing that he hadn't made any decision by himself, he pondered on what to do next. Rook saw a letter and a gaming helmet addressed to his father. He realized that his father was working on uncovering the secrets of a game called Infinite Dendrogram. It piqued his interest, and he started playing the game with the hopes that the game would show him new possibilities. Rook fights off Hugo. Hugo wonders how Rook can know his next move. He asks why Rook hasn't been frozen completely since he is within the range of his ice attacks. Rook analyzes the ice pattern and concludes at the number 13. He tries to figure out why Baby and Marilyn are not affected by Hugo's ability. Rook's left arm gradually freezes, but he still fights back. Cocytus charges at Rook to attack him since he is wide open, but Rook doesn't guard himself. Instead, he studies the ice bot and analyzes it in seconds before getting hit by it. Hugo is surprised that Rook is still alive, so he commends him. Hugo stares at the part of the bot Ray damaged earlier and concludes that it is why Rook survived the attack. Rook concludes and explains how the Cocytus ice works. Hugo tries denying it, but Rook sees through him. Rook declares that he hates Hugo the most, even though he has similar characteristics as Ray. Rook goes on to explain the bad attitudes of Hugo and how he is like a hypocrite. He concludes that Hugo will hold Ray back if he is a friend, so he plans to defeat him there. Baby speaks of how irritating Hugo also is, and informs Rook that their plan is complete. Rook calls Hugo Mrs., and it triggers him to attack Rook. As the Cocytus charges at Rook, he utters the word Union Jack and transforms into a hybrid. Rook fends off the attack of the Cocytus and knocks it away. Hugo says that Rook must be using the power of his embryo. He tries using a smokescreen on Rook and then attacking him, but Rook evades it. Hugo wonders how Rook managed to merge without preparation. Rook informs him that he had been preparing, and it makes Hugo realize that the insults Rook threw at him earlier was to buy time. The two of them acknowledge each other and dash at each other with their finishing blows. Rook's sphere enters the Cocytus and nearly hits Hugo. He collapses to the floor, making Babby and Marilyn separate from him. Hugo thinks he is safe but sees slime inside the pod of his Cocytus. The slime pushes a button, and it ejects Hugo from his Cocytus. Rook and Baby use their temptation techniques to checkmate him. Franklin tells Ray of how his hologram is broadcast around Gideon. He says he hopes to divide the minds of the people and instill fear in them. Ray hates the idea and calls him twisted. Nemesis informs him of how tight the situation they are in. He says their only option is to end Franklin with vengeance. Franklin addresses everyone throughout Gideon. He shows them a device and says that it will release monsters in 652 seconds. He throws the switch inside RSK and tells the audience that their hopes are on Lady Grandia, Lindos, and Ray Starling. He tells them to blame the three of them in case the city falls. RSK opens its eyes and fires off attacks at them. Ray gets hit by the attack and his HP reduces. He analyzes the situation and says that if it continues this way, his plan may work. He says that all he has to do is charge up vengeance. Franklin informs them that they have to take down RSK if they want to save the princess. Ray charges and attacks RSK with Nemesis, but notices that no damage was inflicted. Nemesis asks him why he is stockpiling damages from JSK's attack, but he tells her that he is doing it to charge vengeance. Ray leaps on RSK and uses Vengeance is Mine on it, but it doesn't affect it. RSK opens its eyes to attack Ray, but he quickly escapes on his horse. Franklin makes fun of Ray and explains to him why his attack didn't work on RSK. Franklin explains that he got all the info on Ray through the drug he made him drink the other day. He says that RSK means Ray Starling Killer. Franklin calls it a slime he made to take Ray down. Ray wonders why he would go to such lengths to create something like that, but Franklin explains that he had lost to Ray before. He tells Ray about how he ruined his plan to assassinate Grandia. Ray recalls Grandia's sister telling him about how a guy in glasses handed her an insect repellent. Ray sees that Franklin fits the description and swears that he'll take him down. Franklin orders RSK to attack Ray, but Ray charges at the monster. Nemesis asks how they plan on defeating the monster, but Ray says he has a plan. He gets close to the monster and stares into its eye. Ray sees the label Evil Offspring, but gets knocked off his horse by the monster immediately after. Grandia picks him up and he restores his HP right after. Ray gets on his horse and informs Nemesis about the name he saw earlier. He leaves the range of the monster and informs the remaining two about how a different monster is the one attacking them. Franklin commends him for noticing, but says that Ray can't still defeat it. Ray informs Franklin that no matter how close to zero it is for them to defeat the monster, there's still a way, and he won't give up. Franklin asks if he can defeat the monster in the next 270 seconds, and Ray affirms. He speaks to Nemesis about using their trump card and calls it a great risk. He says that they have to get the fallen soldiers out of the way if he plans on using the trick up his sleeve. Grandia and Lindor offer to help him, so he informs them about his plan. The knights dash forward to rescue the monster while Ray releases his grudge. Franklin wonders why and where Ray got the grudge, but then realizes that he is using the fear from the thousands of people across the city. Ray charges his horse to the maximum, and Franklin sees the danger RSK is in. He orders RSK to move, but Lindor uses ground cross to inhibit it. RSK gets knocked back by the ground cross and its mouth is left open. Ray dashes with the horse at maximum and leaps at RSK. He inserts his spear into the mouth of RSK just before it closes. Franklin asks if he thinks his attack will work, but Ray says that he'll prove him wrong. Ray uses his flame ability to the maximum. He believes that RSK, which was built like him, will hate fire as much as he does. Ray burns the creature to crisp, and the people all over the town cheer for him. Ray falls after defeating RSK. Grandia tries healing him, but discovers that she can't heal his burnt arm. Nemesis tells her to keep him alive. Franklin claps and informs all the people about Ray's performance. He brings out a spare remote and shows it to everyone. He says this particular spare doesn't have a timer, and pushes the button on it a couple of times. Grandia's fathers a few nights with the hopes of challenging Franklin. He makes fun of her and calls out DGB and KOS. The giant dragon and slime stand in front of them. Franklin tells them of how the RSK is the weakest compared to these two. He says these monsters' strengths are comparable to legendary UBM. He plans on making sure Ray suffers for his act. Franklin stares at the city and notices that monsters are not roaming about. He pushes the button on the remote a few more times, but no monster appears. He notes the remotes to be working fine, but suspects someone over there to be using concealment technique. Franklin mentions the superior killer. The journalist is shown at an alleyway with bags filled with orbs. She breathes a sigh of relief and mentions that she made it just in time. Franklin laughs at her and says she and her brother are dead set on ruining his plans. Rook watches Franklin and realizes what he is after. He tells Hugo about how blind he is for not realizing who Franklin is. Hugo defends Franklin by saying that they are similar, but Rook tells him that Franklin is capable of murdering. Hugo objects and tells Rook that he has known Franklin for a long time. He asks Rook what he knows about him, but Rook says he doesn't know much. Rook explains that because he doesn't know much about Franklin, he can assess the situation better. He tells Hugo about all the sinister things Franklin has pulled so far, and says that he has more to come. He tells Hugo that he can predict that Franklin will say something horrible. Franklin goes ahead and says that he'll be moving to Plan C. He plans to annihilate Gideon with over 56,000 modeled monsters. Lindor yells at the Knight that they defeated Franklin before he summons all the monsters, but Franklin corrects him. He says it'll take him 10,000 days to summon them one by one, so he snaps his fingers. An enormous creature carrying a fortress on its back appears. From its mouth, 5,000 monsters lie in wait to be summoned by Franklin. Franklin commands the 5,000 of them to charge at the city. He tells them that even if they kill him, it won't stop the monsters from attacking the city. He tells the Knights that he programmed the creature not to attack him, but to keep moving forward and destroying everything in their path till they die. Ray wakes up and says he'll buy them sometime. He leaps on his horse and carries Nemesis. Franklin laughs at him and says that he's moving to tears because of Ray's behavior. Ray tells him he will not give up until he is done with Franklin. He charges at the creatures and uses his miasma attack to kill some of them. A few escape and attack him. Ray falls to the ground and a monster leaps to attack him. The monster gets shot. A shadowy figure appears beside Ray and says she'll lend a hand. Ray thanks her and calls her Marie, which surprises her. She wonders how he knows she is the one, but Ray tells her that he's always known since their first encounter. The two of them go against the monsters, and it makes Franklin wonder if they can defeat all 5,000 of them. Rook and some other rookies enter the battlefield to support Ray. He wonders how these people are here, and realizes that Hugo betrayed him. Franklin shrugs it off and says that he betrayed her first. In the arena, the people around try breaking the barrier covering the place, but can't. A slime monster leaps at Shu, but he destroys it with a smack. He hits the barrier with his fist, and it shatters. Time moves in the barrier. Shu walks off to meet Farigo and Shunyu. Figaro asks him where he is off to, and he indirectly tells Figaro that he'll help his brother. Franklin sees the people holding out against his monsters, so he orders his dragon to attack them. The Knights and Mages try stopping the dragon, but their attacks are ineffective. The dragon slaughters the Tians and kills off the players. Marie fires an attack at it, but notices the aura of the dragon protecting it. She takes one of her bullets and tries shooting it, but the dragon leaves her for Ray. Marie calls Ray's attention to it. He sees the dragon running at him, but decides that he'll face it head on. Nemesis worries about him. He tells her that he'll probably die, but he says he won't do so without a fight. He says he'll use counter-absorption the moment the dragon attack hits. The dragon dashes at Ray, and he prepares to counter it at the last minute. Everyone turns their heads at him and sees the dragon gnawing at him. Shu appears, and sends the dragon into the sky with a kick. He tells Ray to only counter when he knows that he'll stay alive. The dragon disappears from a single hit from Shu. Shu puts on a ring and speaks to Franklin. He proclaims how he'll obliterate every monster Franklin has up his sleeves. Shu, known as King of Destruction, has a job level of over 1080 and a strength of over 100,000. Franklin doesn't understand how he can keep up with monsters that are far faster than him. He concludes that Shu is applying his martial arts skills in the game. Figaro says that Shu is merely predicting the trajectory of his opponents and hitting them where they cannot alter it. Shunyu confirms that Franklin has set a trap under them in case his plan C fails. She promises to take care of it, so she asks what Farigo will be doing. He says that he'll still be the two strongest in the stand in case any of them tries attacking. Franklin watches as Shu battles all the beasts. He analyzes Shu and calls him flawless for his great strength. He says that he'll pour all the remaining 50,000 monsters into the city at once, and Shu won't be able to stop them all together. Franklin speaks of how the city won't be able to prevent all the monsters from getting in, but he gets interrupted by an artillery. The artillery wipes out the monsters that are charging towards the city, and it makes Franklin furious. He complains about how Ray ruined his first plan, how Marie ruined his second, and how Shu is ruining his third. He accepts that he'll lose, but brings out another remote and pushes the button, and the giant monster starts drilling the ground. The crowd at the arena cheers for Shu as he keeps decimating each monster with a single strike. One of the strongest players in the arena decides to join in on the fight. On his seat, he squeezes most of the monsters that are digging their way into the floor and kills them. Franklin wonders if the King of Destruction is playing fair. He sees the artillery being controlled by Shu and says that he is sure they cost him a lot. He wonders why Shu hasn't fired at his pandemonium and thinks he has another objective. Ray interrupts Franklin's train of thought by landing on the pandemonium beside him. Rook is amazed by how Shu's embryo is an artillery. Out of the corner of his eye, he sees the Cocytus dash at the pandemonium and smiles. Rook believes Hugo should do something more than fret. Shu is informed that Ray has reached the top of the pandemonium. He recalls permitting Ray to speak with Franklin. Franklin asks Ray about Shu, and Ray says that Shu is his elder brother. He laughs and asks Ray if he sees the familiarity in their tale. Franklin asks Ray what he is doing up here, and Ray says that he has 3 questions to ask him. Franklin guesses that one of them is to save the princess while he asks Ray for the remaining. Ray tells him that he has something to ask of him. Ray asks him why the Tians mean to him, and he goes philosophical. Franklin laughs and blabbers about Infinite Dendrogram. Ray asks him what the people of the game world are, and Franklin guesses that they are either aliens or artificial intelligence. He continues by telling Ray that if this were the real world and they were faced with the same scenario, he would still do the same thing. Ray asks him why he's doing such a vile thing, but Franklin says that he is done losing and being manipulated. He asks Ray to ask him his 3rd question, but gets interrupted by attacks from the artillery. He wonders if Shu changed his mind since he has been battling the monsters for a while. Franklin looks at where he left the princess, but doesn't find her there. He guesses that Ray is a decoy. The artillery fires massive attacks at Pandemonium, and it makes Franklin check its health. He sees how little it is, and wonders why it was Shu who showed up to stop him, rather than Junyu or Figaro. Ray charges at Franklin to defeat him, but Hugo jumps in to protect him. Nemesis tells him to build up his counter level, and he tells her that he'll be reckless. Hugo shouts at Ray that he'll protect his sister. He dashes at Ray and his Cocytus to slash at him, but Ray does the same. One of the arms of the Cocytus explodes, so Hugo uses the other to attack Ray. Ray sees that it's too late, so he leaps and sacrifices his right arm. The Cocytus cuts off Ray's arm, but he grabs Nemesis with his teeth and stabs Hugo through the machine. Ray uses vengeance as mine and annihilates Hugo. Ray gets up and dashes at Franklin. He uses his left arm to hit him off Pandemonium while burning him. Franklin says he'll win the next time and disappears. The Pandemonium disappears and Ray falls off. Nemesis rides Silver and catches him before he hits the ground. She calls him reckless and smiles. Grandia recovers Ray's HP, but apologizes to him about her magic not being strong enough to recover his missing limb. Marie informs Ray that the person capable of regenerating his limb is Tsukuyo, the High Priestess. She says that she wouldn't recommend him meeting her. Shu and the other top players agree with her. Ray recalls the kind of person Tsukuyo is, and says that so far his right arm is okay. He can use his mouth to hold his weapon. Nemesis blushes and thinks of it as a kiss. Shu, Shunyu, and Farigo celebrate their victory over dinner. Figaro offers Shunyu a drink, but she says that she's underage. Shu asks if anyone in the arena made a move, but Shunyu tells him that she smashed the core of the monster below the arena before it could even start. Figaro informs them about how Caldina, the magically strongest, did something. Shunyu throws a rock to Shu and he struggles to crush it. He notes that Caldina must have used multiple binding spells against the monster below the arena. Shu explains to them how the 2 strongest players are great, and that if they had teamed up with Franklin, the story would have been different. Shunyu asks Shu about the rumor of his fight with the King of the Earth. He tells them that it's true, and the match is a tie. Caldina travels back home and recalls the event that happened earlier. He says that he forgot the great Shu, and would have loved to fight him. In a faraway land, Franklin tells Hugo that he'll be having him leave the clan. He tells him of how people have been leaving and betraying him lately. He asks Hugo why he'd come to help him despite what he did to him. Hugo cries and says that he doesn't know. Franklin meets up with him and tells him to search for the answer. He says that Hugo should travel about and find things he loves. He should experience the world as he wants and not be shackled to it. Franklin hands Hugo a scroll and calls him Yu. Yu is a girl on Earth, and Francesca is her sister. Francesca, who is Franklin, wishes Hugo a happy birthday in advance. Hugo cries and is touched that her sister remembers her birthday. Outside Franklin's room, Psycho congratulated Hugo for settling things with his sister. She says that she finds it weird that the 2 chose to be men in the Dendrogram. Franklin is happy that his sibling is out of his way. He plans to come up with a heinous strategy against Ray Starling. At the church, Grandia mourns her fallen knights, and wonders if they are that different from the players. Lindor interrupts her and informs her that Elizabeth the Princess has escaped once again. He hands her a note written by the princess, and Grandia becomes worried. In the arena, Ray and Nemesis prepare themselves to face Marie. They see Elizabeth hailing Marie and wonder what she's doing there. Ray asks how she got here, but she says that she snuck out and followed his brother to the arena. They get fed up with the princess's case and say that she's too good at escaping. Marie asks Ray if he thinks he can win, but he tells her that the odds are against him. Ray says that so far as the chances aren't zero, he won't give up until he wins. Marie calls him by his nickname, Ray the Unbreakable, and it surprises him. She calls him by other nicknames he's got, and he decides to go with Unbreakable. Nemesis calls him Prince, but he says he denies the nickname. Marie prepares to shoot at him, and Ray takes his stance. Ray walks past a blonde girl on his way to college. He greets her and she nods at him before walking off. Ray looks back at her and smiles.